Hello, good evening, Sharai. How are you? Is everything okay?
Evening, teacher. Yes, everything's fine.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Good, Sharai. So let's begin with this new topic that we're going to be talking about. But as I always do before working with this new topic, can you tell me what you remember about the previous topic that we were discussing?
Well, um, I think it's about life or how to identify a liar.
Good, exactly. How many factors or how many elements did we get to see to identify a liar? Do you remember?
Mm, I remember four. The first
Okay,
one is, uh, well, I don't remember, but I think that I remember that was four, but I don't know. I don't remember which.
sorry. Okay, that was an advertising. So let's try to work with the four, please. Sharai, one more time. You were telling me what are the four of them?
Well, I don't remember the names or the fourth. I just remember that there were four if times to
Okay,
identify it.
good. So I'm going to try to give you some hints. Let's say, for example, in the first one, a keyword is going to be third person. In the second one, the keyword is going to be negative. In the third one, it's going to be simple. And in the fourth one, it's going to be like irrelevant or unnecessary. With that information, can you explain a little bit what you remember? One more time. The first one is third person. The second one is negative. The third one is simple. And the fourth one is unnecessary or irrelevant. So with those words, what can you tell me about the elements that we saw?
So, in the first, if to identify a liar, is the liar are talking in third person. The liar never includes uh, themselves uh, in in the in mm, well, never includes themselves, like something like that. The second one is the liar say always is negative. The third one is the liar always talks in people don't say uh, a lot of information. And the last one is the liar start talking irrelevant things and giving unnecessary information. And that's
Great. Thank you very much, Sharai. And yes, you're right. Okay, that's great. It's always important to remember that kind of vocabulary. Sometimes we're going to be using those words, so that's great. First one, right? They talk more about others. They don't talk about themselves. That's why they use third person. Second one, yes, they are always negative, kind of aggressive, right? Because they feel guilty in a subconscious way. And the third one, yes, they don't try to say like a lot, but in other words, they use simple terms, right? To say any lie, they use simple terms. And in the last one, as you said very well, they tend to use a lot of unnecessary and irrelevant information to pretend that they are being complex, but in fact, it's not being complex, right? It's just fill out with unnecessary words, irrelevant information, like factual sounding information that pretends to be something that it's not. Good. Now, with that review, we're going to go to the new topic, which is going to be this one. The name or the title of this video is actually a question. That is, what happens if you cut down all the cities or all of a city's trees? So I'm going to ask one question here before starting, Sharai. How important do you think that trees are? And what do you think that it happens? Like the question that you have on the screen, right? And what do you think that it happens if we cut down all the trees that we have in the city?
Yeah, about the first question, I think the trees are very important because everybody knows, right, that trees will provide oxygen to all the, the humans. So I think it's very important. And also, the trees give us um, place to rest in a on a when we are in a camp. Right, you know. And about the second question, I think if all the trees um, are down, uh, well, I don't know. I think all the people will suffer the consequences about uh, well, I don't know exactly, but I think the humans will uh, suffer the consequences.
Okay, okay, yes, definitely something is going to happen, right? Because trees like give us, you mentioned these, like a lot of benefits. There are many things that they do, right, for us, and it's very important to take care of them. So if we get to cut down all the trees that we have in the city, many things are going to happen and we are going to change, right, the way we live, but it's going to be very negative. So let's see, we're going to see like the tale of two cities. The two cities are going to be these two, and we didn't see this information with you
And the
yet, right?
trees that
Sorry, Sharai. So we didn't see this information with you, right? These are the two cities, Uruk and Anuradhapura. Have you ever heard of these two cities?
No, never.
Okay, so let's take a look then at the introduction of this video, Sharai, because you're going to tell me what happens with these two cities. All right, it's related to the trees. So you're going to tell me what is the consequence of cutting down the trees and what happened to one city and what happened to the other city. All right, so let's pay attention and let's see what happens.
This is the tale of two ancient cities and the trees that determined their destinies. In 3000 BC, Uruk was more densely populated than modern-day New York City. This crowded capital had to continually expand their irrigation system to feed its growing population. 2,500 years later, in Sri Lanka, the city of Anuradhapura had a similar problem. They were also growing constantly, and like Uruk, their city relied heavily on an elaborate irrigation system. As Uruk grew, its farmers began chopping down trees to make space for more crops. In Anuradhapura, however, trees were sacred. Their city housed an offshoot of the Bodhi tree, under which Buddha himself was said to have attained enlightenment. Religious reverence slowed farmers' axes and even led the city to plant additional trees in urban parks. Initially, Uruk's expansion worked well, but without trees to filter their water supply, Uruk's irrigation system became contaminated. Evaporating water left mineral deposits, which rendered the soil too salty for agriculture. Conversely, Anuradhapura's irrigation system was designed to work in concert with the surrounding forest. Their city eventually grew to more than twice Uruk's population, and today, Anuradhapura still cares for a tree planted over 2,000 years ago.
Good. So it was a long introduction, all right, 1 minute and 40 seconds, but let's say without the first part, 1 minute and 30 more or less. But this is the whole introduction. And this is like the tale of these two cities, all right, Uruk and Anuradhapura. So it was only one, all right, one time that we got to hear that. But tell me, please, everything that you were able to understand, Sharai.
Okay. Well, in this part, we're seeing two Asian cities. One of those is Europe, and the other is, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but both cities were very populated. Uh, I mean, with a lot of people, a lot of population. I don't know if I'm expressing
Great.
correctly.
I'm going to make the correction later. Great. Go ahead.
Yes. So both cities, as I mentioned, there have a lot of there have I don't know a lot of people, and the Europe city uh, could contain uh, all of these trees, and in the other city and start to cut down all the trees, and the water there was no more water. Uh, um, mm, yes, that's all.
Okay, good, Sharai. I think it was great. There is just one little confusion because it's going to be actually the opposite, right? Uruk is going to be the one that cuts down the trees, and Anuradhapura is going to be the city, all right, that takes care of the trees. But the information that you're giving me besides that, it's correct. It's great. Now, the word that you want to use there, Sharai, it's very close. Population is going to be the noun, and populated, all right, it's going to be like the adjective. So yes, you can say these are very populated cities, very crowded cities, right? So the situation in both cities is like the same. Both are cities that are growing a lot. So I'm going to play this one more time, and we're going to be identifying important words with the captions, all right? So good. It is the tale of two Asian cities. Very good.
Of two ancient cities and the trees that determined their
Right? In a certain way, this is a metaphor, right? The trees that determined their destinies because they took different decisions, right? One city took care of the trees, which is Anuradhapura. Look at that tree. That's a big tree. That is Anuradhapura's tree, and they take care of the trees. But Uruk, they didn't do it, all right? They decided to cut down the trees. And why? We're going to see why.
destinies. In 3000 BC, Uruk was more densely
Right? And here they are mentioning that Uruk was more densely populated. This is the adjective, right? Populated. It means a lot of people in that city, right? Even more than modern New York, it says.
populated than modern-day New York City.
Right? And it happened the same. I'm going to try to go a little bit faster so that we have the time to cover everything. And because of that, right, crowded capital, they had to work on the irrigation system. This is the irrigation system, right? The way they are going to be distributing the water. If you have any questions, you're going to let me know, please, Sharai. All right, but this is the irrigation system. Again, they are distributing water so that all people, right, have access to it. Then, right, and it's going to fit, of course, right, the population that is growing and growing in Uruk. So at the beginning, it's going well for Uruk. Then they are mentioning another Asian city, Anuradhapura, that had a similar problem because they consider that it's a problem that the population is growing. All right, that's Anuradhapura. And it's also a growing population, right? It's also very populated. And they relied a lot on this irrigation system as well. It means the distribution of water, right? As you can see over there. The way they distribute water to feed the population. So here, so far, everything is good. Both cities work in the same way. But here is the problem, all right? Uruk, when it was growing, decided to chop down trees. It means cut down the trees to make space for more crops. Crops are the places, right, the space in which you are going to cultivate, all right, to grow your food. Those are crops, all right? Crops are like places in the land, all right, land spaces in which you are going to grow your food so that you can eat. So farmers cut down the trees. That was Uru's mistake. But what happened in Anuradhapura? They were sacred, all right? They were sacred. It means that you cannot touch the trees because they are sacred, right? That is a religious word, sacred. And because of that, right, they took care of the trees. And it mentions that they even, over here, let me show you, they even let, right, to plant additional trees. So they were not only sacred, they were also so important that they decided to plant more trees. And this is Anuradha, okay? And at the beginning, Uruk was working well, but because they cut down the trees, it happened what you told, right? The irrigation system became contaminated. The water started to evaporate. The soil, it means the land, right, become salty. It's like salt, right, for agriculture. It means you cannot grow your food there. So many problems because of you cut down the trees. But however, in Anuradhapura, the irrigation system was designed to work. It means because of the trees were not cut down, everything was working great. And they mentioned, right, that even now they are still taking care, right, of a tree that has like over 2,000 years. And that's how. So to finish please this conversation, Sharai, let's try to explain using your words about these two cities and what happened to them related to the trees, please.
Okay, so this video talk about ancient cities, which were very populated, uh, have the population growing a lot, but and Dura, that city take care of the trees because they consider the trees as sacred and
Sacred, very good.
sacred. So they, instead of cut off the trees, they plant a lot of trees. On the other side, Europe, when the population growing a lot, they decide to cut down the trees to get a lot of crops for them, to get a lot of crops for cultivate their food and things. And the irrigation, it's important to mention that both cities have an irrigation system, and Europe this uh, with these decisions to cut down the trees, the irrigation system disappear, and Andorra and the other city, the irrigation system is maintained, and that's
Great. That's perfect. Now you gave me all the details and that's perfect, Sharai. So let's finish here. We're going to continue with the next part of this video in the next conversation. Sharai, thanks for being in this conversation. And if you have more questions about the words, try to write them down and you're going to ask me those questions in the next time. All right?
great, teacher. Thank you very
Good.
much.
Perfect. Have a good night. Bye-bye, Sharai.
Bye.
Hello, Lourdes. Good evening. How are you?
Hi, teacher. I'm fine. Thank you.
That's great, Lourdes. So let's begin. We have a new video for you, all right, to watch. We're going to continue talking about marketing and something related to it. But first, as always, as I always do, I would like you to tell me, please, everything that you can remember related to the previous video, right? It was about this guy that was from Germany who was giving like some information related to his experience with marketing, and he was giving some like information related to it. What do you remember about that video, Lourdes?
Okay, I remember that he said that the things that happen, it's not only uh, about luck, it's more about something that you plan, that you built in the time, and it related, and he related with marketing, in maybe not in a business way, but in how people how a person could sell them himself or herself. He talked about the 4 P's and C's of marketing, and he said that the product is it's related with the customer needs, and we have to focus about what are the needs in the market, more that prepare for maybe a boss or maybe a job. It's better prepare for ourselves to have more knowledgement or be better every day. And then he also talked about the cost, the price that people have to, if they uh, want to do something, want to get that goal that they have. It's very important taking count that it's a cost. There is a price that the person has to pay. And he put the example of a famous musician. I think that it was a rock star that he prepared himself, and he spent a lot of time with the guitar, with music, and um, he even let the university, um, and then he always was thinking about music, and that was the price that he had to take to become a big rock star.
All right, great, Lourdes. As always, right? You had all the information there. You have great memory. You're able to remember everything very, very clearly, and that's great. And I want now to continue like talking about that, but about a specific part in which the person was given right example, the rock star, the guitarist, right, that started at the same age that the person who was giving the speech did. And it's kind of right interesting the way he mentions the price and the cost, right, that something needs to have so that you get something in exchange that is like the reward. So I remember when I started like working at executive English, right, in a different place like some years ago, that in management, right, we were deciding, right, how to get to more people. Sometimes giving some uh, like different right ways to access to this service. And sometimes someone told us, right, or were telling us that it's important that we have a price, that it's not something that we give for free, because people need to understand that that's going to have a cost, but that cost is going to have like a reward or something like that. But what do you think about that, Lourdes, in terms of marketing? What do you think about some services that can be very, very cheap, all right, and people like to get those because they are cheap, but other ones that can be very expensive, but like the service can be even better. So what do you think, and what do you think it's good for any company, any enterprise to do when they want to sell their products or their services? Is it okay to give that product or that service at a very low cost, right, to do it very cheaply? Or is it okay to keep like a good standard, like a very not expensive but from medium to expensive cost, so that people understand that investment, right, is going to have like a reward? What do you think works better and why, Lourdes?
I think that it's a very, very complex uh, situation because yes, people is they used to relate the price with the quality of from a service or a product. And when it's very funny because when they see that the price is very high, they could relate it that that service or that product has a high quality, but only a few ones decide to pay for it. When they see that the price is very low, they think that the product or the service is not the better option, the best option. So I think that it's something related with the psychology, and the companies have to find some kind of I don't know how to say equilibrio.
Yeah, you can say balance. Equilibrium is also one word, but you can say balance. That's better. Balance.
Okay. So companies have to find a balance about between the price and the quality, and maybe make market research to know how the to know about the target that they are looking for. Because, for example, if we take in count Apple, it's a very different segment, a very different target that I don't know, Huawei or Samsung. I think that in Apple it's very reasonable. I don't know how to razonable.
Reasonable. It can be reasonable.
Reasonable.
Mhm.
It's more reasonable. Put price higher prices because the target is that kind of target that maybe could pay for that product. But if we think about Samsung or we think about Huawei, we see that the target is not so it's not like the Apple's target. It's very different, and maybe if these companies put the prices of Apple, um, they could maybe they couldn't or they won't have the the sales that they have now. So yes, I think that it's very complex, and at the university I saw a few theories about prices, about this psychology of prices, that a price that ends in 5, I think that it was the customer feel like it's a fair price, or when it ends in, I remember it was 9, I think. Uh, it's like they say like it's a very uh, a offer or something like that, and and I remember that it was something about ends in 0, but I don't remember with what kind of theory or what the customers see about this last number. But yes, it's very complex.
All right, that's great. That was really interesting, Lourdes. The fact that you got to mention the difference between, right, iPhone, Android, right, and of course the systems that they use, iOS and the Android system, but the companies itself, right, Samsung and Apple, right? It's very interesting because yes, you're right. It depends on the target, right? What's the people you're going to be aiming to, right? Who are going to be the buyers? what is like the character, or what are the characteristics, right, that those people have, right? Are they going to be able to acquire or obtain a product that is, I don't know, right, $1,000? Is it going to be good for the people that we aim to? So that's really interesting. I agree with you. It's going to depend on a lot of elements. So it's not simply deciding, right, we're going to be charging this amount. It depends on what's going to be the people that are going to be interested, right, in obtaining your service or in getting your product. Good. So I think that's going to be kind of it. But I have just one last question, right? Related, for example, to English, right? The service of teaching English. And you can talk about executive English, or you can talk about other places that teach English in Bolivia in general, right? What do you think is that these institutes are aiming to? Very shortly, Lourdes, do you think that people who are going to be learning English, right, the most of them are going to be people willing to pay like a very large amount of money, or are they willing to learn English for a very fair price, something like that? What is your opinion on that to finish this conversation?
I think that here in Bolivia, not only the English section, the English industry, but also the education industry. I think that people don't don't like to spend so much money in this industry. They prefer to get something cheaper, but they want quality too. So I I even like I work here in executive English. I have the experience of do the clients attention, client service in the social media. And I think that in these 3 months, 4 months that I've been working here, I saw like maybe 10 messages that I give them the information, the prices, and then they answers me with something like, it's so expensive. I don't want more information, or it's ridiculous the price, and those kind of things. And I think that it's because the culture here in Bolivia, with with the clients that are not from Bolivia, I think that I had less problems of this kind. But it's so common see that in Bolivian people.
Great. Perfect, Lourdes. Thank you very much again for that answer. Keep those ideas, because in the next conversation, we're going to go back to these ideas, and we're going to watch the new video that is related to this that you're mentioning. All right. So thanks for being in this conversation, and I'll see you in the next one. Well, in tomorrow for the class. Okay.
Okay, teacher, thank you.
Perfect. Thank
Bye.
you very much. Bye bye. Hello. Good evening, Mariana. How are you?
Good evening, teacher. Fine.
That's
Everything's
great.
fine.
Very good, Mariana. So let's begin with our conversation now. We have a new topic, but before going to this topic, I would like you to tell me, please, Mariana, everything that you remember related to the previous topic that we were talking about. Do you remember something about it?
Yes, I remember we talking of about the people who are bilingual and how they learn the languages and how they think when has more than one language.
Okay, good. So bilingual people, right? Some of the benefits that they may have, but mainly the like those three right type of bilingual people that we can find. we were taking a look at the first two types, if you remember very well. Do you remember what was the difference between the little girl that was learning English and her brother? What is the difference between the way they learned English, Mariana? Do you remember?
Yes, I remember that she learned the two languages at the same time, and she can think she think um uh, in the two languages. I don't know how to explain it, but she has a concept of not like traduction, and his and her brother learned English when he was in the school, and he thinks different because he uh, I don't know how to explain, but I I remember that he used the language like some traduction, no think in the two languages.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, but you're doing a great job. So yes, the first one, the little girl learned the two languages at the same time, right? So let's recognize one more time what is the difference between the little girl, this one, and her brother, this guy. So yes, she, right, was a compound bilingual. What is a compound bilingual? Is a person that learns English, right, at a very young age, and that person learns that language at the same time, right, that the other language. So she's learning English and Spanish at the same time with only one set of consonants. It means, for example, you're going to see when she sees a plane, she's not translating, but she's directly saying, right, the word in Spanish and the word in English, because she understands that that thing that she's taking a look at is both, right? The idea in Spanish and the idea in English. So yes, that is very well said. She doesn't translate her ideas, right? She just knows that the object that she's taking a look at is one thing, and it has a Spanish name and it has an English name, right? But something different happens with the guy. The guy, we're going to see here, Mariana, that the main difference is that he learns this in school or at university, and he learns academic English, and he speaks Spanish at home with his family. All right. So what is that is the idea of the second type of bilingual people. All right. And it's coordinate bilingual. So a coordinate bilingual is going to learn academic, all right, English or academic Spanish, and is going to speak the other language at home or with friends. But also be careful here. This person is not going to use a lot of translation, okay? But he speaks academic language, one of those, and the other one natively because of his her roots. It means the origins, right? Let's try to explain then with those extra details, please, one more time, the difference between these two, Mariana.
Okay, I understand that she thinks in the two languages, how I said before, and she look at the things uh no it translate, but she knows that this thing, for example, it's the both. And his brother, her brother, sorry, learns English in the school or in the college, and he talks Spanish when he is with his friends or his family, but he speaks more like academic English.
Yes, correct. And that is very important. And it's academic, but he doesn't have that need of translation. Sometimes he can do it, all right, but it's not something that he needs to do because he can speak English very well, academically speaking, or he's learning, and he still speaks Spanish at home, right? But then we have the third type. This is something that we didn't watch. So let's pay attention to the third type, all right, of bilingual people.
Sets of concepts, learning English in school while continuing to speak Spanish at home and with friends.
Right? That is the second one. That is the guys. But now this is the third one. They're going to show the third one.
Finally, Gabriella's parents are likely to be subordinate bilinguals who learn a secondary language by filtering it through their primary language. Because all types of bilingual people,
all right, it's short. I'm going to play it one more time. The third one is very short.
Spanish at home and with friends. Finally, Gabriella's parents are likely to be subordinate bilinguals who learn a secondary language by filtering it through their primary language.
All right, and one last time.
Gabriella's parents are likely to be subordinate bilinguals who learn a secondary language by filtering it through their primary language.
So, what do you get from that short idea, Mariana? Because this is the last type of bilingual. What do you get here?
I think that they. I think I understand that they don't speak English very well. It's like I don't know, like expansion that they have of of the things that they need to learn for live in a country like US. I don't know if it's right, my idea.
Great.
But it's how her say it, it's like a filter by Spanish. I don't know if she she says that, but I don't know how to explain it. But I think that it's like this.
Great. No, actually, Mariana, you did a very, very, very good job because everything that you said is correct. And yes, she mentioned that word, filtering, right? And yeah, they only learn English because they need to learn English. And they don't have the chance of learning English in an academic context. So they are learning by filtering the words through Spanish. So what is this, right? It's a piña, pineapple, right? Piña, pineapple. And yes, you said that very well. They didn't mention that, but the idea that it's behind this is what you mentioned very well. That need is because they live perhaps in the United States and they need to know certain words, certain important words, right? To go, for example, to the supermarket and buy something, to go to a certain place and ask for something, right? So this is the fourth one. Subordinate bilingual is someone that learns the language through the native language, all right? That's why the last one, they use a lot of translation, okay? Subordinate bilingual, all right? This is one kind of bilingual that uses a lot of translation because it's through the native language that they learn the new language. All right, so these are the three. To finish this, please, we're going to have more. I'm going to ask you something else, please. Let's try to summarize one more time the difference between the three types, please, Mariana, to finish this idea.
Okay, I think the first one is like a native language that that she has, because she learned it when she was like when like since she born. It's like how I say it, like a native language that she has, and her brother has academic English that they can speak very well and and express himself very well, but their parents has just I don't know how to say, like como un inglés bien no, ay, no sé, bien necesario.
All right, you can use the same words even, Mariana, if you want, because the time you explained it, it was perfect. You can say that, or you can say they just have the English that they need. All right, like the necessary English. That's it.
Like exactly, like necessary English for communicate some things. I think that it's just that.
Good. That was great. Yes. Remember, only one correction in the explanation that you gave me. You said the word is going to be since, all right? Not science, is going to be since. And you have to say since she was born, not since she
Okay.
was born. All right? You have to use the verb to be. But it was great. Yes. It can be since that person was born, or it can be when that person is like very little, right? Like a kid, a child. But yes, that is the main difference. You were right. So those are the three types of bilingual. You know, it's very broad. Of course, many people can fit in the first one, in the second one, in the third one. This is just for theory, right? I would say that, as you mentioned at the beginning, because you're learning now this academic English, right? You're going to be part of the second one. It can be right. There can be like some ranges. Sometimes you can speak English very, very well. Sometimes you're still learning. It doesn't matter, right? You are part of a type of English in which you are learning it, perhaps in an academic way because it's part of an institute, right? It's part of an institute. But I don't know, what do you think about these three types of bilingual, Mariana? Again, I'm going to ask you one more time, which one do you think you belong to? And the last one, which one do you think that the majority of the people that live in your city or your country are part of? What kind of?
I think that the people, um I don't know, in like people like my age, I think that are part of the second. I don't know. Here in Bolivia, I think that the most people just are the third part, and but generations more little are part of the second one.
Okay, good. That's a really interesting analysis. One little thing, instead of our generation more little, you can say that our younger generations, you can say, or our younger
Okay.
generation. All right, good, good. Yes, sometimes, right, most people learn the third type, right, or learn English like in the third type because that's the English they need, right? The necessary English to communicate. But sometimes, right, other kinds of people, sometimes these younger generations, they're going to be learning English academically, right, and they're going to be part of the second type of bilingual. And the last question that I'm going to be asking you, knowing that there are these three types, which one do you know? Well, of course sometimes it's going to be like very obvious to know, but which one do you think is harder for that person to get to master English, and which one is the easier and why of these three types?
Teacher, it sounds interrupt what you told me.
Okay, yes, very simple. The question, which person do you think, or when is it easier? I'm going to ask it like this. When is it easier to master English? When you're part of the first type, the second type, or the third type? and why? And when is it harder?
I think that the second part.
All right. So
And
tell me, Maria.
and I don't know, but I think that it's the second part, uh, because for that I think that they learn English more technique, and
Okay.
I think that that
Okay, yes, that's a good reason, right? That they learn English, right, in a more formal way, more academic way, and perhaps they have the chance to master English, right, in an easier way than other people, right, and the other type. So good. We're going to be finishing here, Mariana. The next conversation is going to be a different one with a different topic. Thanks for being in this conversation, and I'll see you tomorrow, Mariana.
okay, teacher, goodbye.
Bye bye. Good night. Luciana, how are you?
Hi, teacher. How are you?
Hello, Luciana. Everything is going well. So let's try to take advantage of this time that we have, Luciana. We're going to have a conversation related to a different topic with you, which is over here. I don't know why it changed. Related to music, and we're going to see, right, what are the benefits sometimes of listening classical music. There's one guy that is this one, right, Benjamin Zander, who's going to tell us, right, the way that classical music can transform people sometimes, all right, and why this is going to happen. But before checking, all right, this video itself, I wanted to know if you got to find the video of yesterday's class, Luciana. I
Uh,
couldn't send you the link this
yes,
morning.
teacher. I was able to look in the class, and I already did the two sentences or the four sentences you did yesterday.
Perfect.
So the sentences are right now in the classwork of Unit 2.
That's great. Perfect, Luciana. I'm going to take a look at them so that I can
Okay.
make some corrections, and I'm going to let you know what those corrections are going to be, or perhaps they are okay, but I'm going to let you know. All right?
All right.
Good. Also, a quick reminder, today at 11:59 p.m. is the last chance, right, to finish the second unit. No, actually, it's going to be the third one. Let me verify. Yes, actually, it's the third one, right? So today, right, it's the last chance to finish the third unit. Why? Because the quiz was also assigned yesterday, Luciana, and you have until Thursday to take the quiz of that last unit. Because on Wednesday, we're going to start the last unit, all right, to finish the content of this course. I don't know.
Okay. And the quiz is till
Thursday,
Thursday. Okay.
exactly. Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Is the time that you have to take this quiz.
Okay.
All
And
right.
today I have to uh, midnight, right? Before midnight.
Exactly. To complete the assignments that you were not able to complete, that are part of the unit that we just finished. All right? Good.
Okay.
So let's pay attention then to this video, and we're going to talk about it, at least one part of it, to understand what is the idea behind this guy's speech. So let's pay attention to it. You're going to let me know, please, if you are going to need more volume, but I think it's okay.
Story of the two salesmen who went down to Africa in the 1900s. They were sent down to find if there was any opportunity for selling shoes. And they wrote telegrams back to Manchester. And one of them wrote, "Situation hopeless, stop, they don't wear shoes." And the other one wrote, "Glorious opportunity, they don't have any shoes yet." Now, there's a similar situation in the classical music world, because there are some people who think that classical music is dying. And there are some of us who think you ain't seen nothing yet. And rather than go into statistics and trends and tell you about all the orchestras that are closing and the record companies that are folding, I thought we should do an experiment tonight. An experiment. Actually, it's not really an experiment because I know the outcome. But it's like an experiment. Now, before...
All right. He's going to work with that little experiment and so on. But what were you able to understand about that first part? That was kind of an introduction and a metaphor that he was doing with some shoes, let's say, and then with classical music. What is the thing that you were able to understand, Luciana?
Teacher, I was not able to hear very well the first part, respect the shoes, because I have like a problem with my connection. But after that, I was able to get that he's telling how some people think that classical music is dying, and he thinks that it's not really that way.
Good, good, very good. Exactly, right? He says, you ain't seen, right? Nothing yet. So, yes, in other words, he's saying that he's the ones, right, who thinks the opposite. He is the ones, right, or the one who is going to say, well, if you see that there's something negative happening there, I see that there's something positive, right, or that something positive may come out from that negative situation. So yes. And why do you think that he's mentioning that idea, Luciana? Why is he mentioning the idea of classical music? And why do you think that he's saying you ain't seen nothing yet?
What I think that it means with that?
Exactly. What do you think that he means?
I think that it means that when he says that they don't know nothing about that, is because he knows something, or he thinks or have some belief respect the topic.
Okay, very good. So with that idea, let's see what is going to be the experiment to talk about it. All right, let's continue.
Before we start, I need to do two things. One is I want to remind you of what a 7-year-old child sounds like when he plays the piano. Maybe you have this child at home. He sounds something like this. I see some of you recognize this child. Now, if he practices for a year and takes lessons, he's now 8 and he sounds like this. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons, now he's 9. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons, now he's 10. At that point, they usually give up. Now, if he'd waited for one more year, you would have heard this. Now, what happened was not maybe what you thought, which was he suddenly became passionate, engaged, involved, got a new teacher, he hit puberty, or whatever it is. What actually happened was the impulses were reduced. You see, the first time he was playing with an impulse on every note. And the second, with an impulse every other note. You can see it by looking at my head. The 9-year-old put an impulse on every 4 notes. And the 10-year-old on every 8 notes. And the 11-year-old, one impulse on the whole phrase. I don't know how we got into this position.
Okay, so we're going to continue, right? Of course, it can be like a lot of playing, but He's trying to communicate something with this idea. What do you get from this example or the first part of the experiment that he's trying to show, Luciana?
I think that he shows that comparison because it tries to explain how the older it gets, the people have more like how can I say conocimiento,
More knowledge.
more knowledge, respect, how to play with. I'm not remembering right now what was the word that he uses, but it was talking about how they play some notes specific, and I think that with that comparison, the older it gets, the kids that are playing, is more complex and more complete, more natural maybe, or organic, the composition.
Good, very good. That word, I think it's interesting. I think that you use this word, right? Organic. That is great. Yes, natural, organic. And the word that he was using a lot was also impulse, right? So one thing that music can teach to people when you teach this to, for example, a child, is going to be to control some impulses that they may have. Of course, they have more knowledge, but if you see, sometimes, right, children are very impulsive, but little by little, they are learning to control those impulses, right? And they like use even that impulse less and less when they play, because music is going to teach them to control not only many other things, right, to be organized and so on, but control those impulses. And be careful just with that word. Instead of that word, you can say comparison, all right, a comparison. So yes, it was a comparison, right, between children, right, of different ages, and the differences between the playing that they had, right, the
Okay,
control of
teacher,
those impulses.
but sorry, what word? I was not able to hear you very well.
Yes, you were saying something similar to a comparación, right? Something very similar, but it's going to be like comparison, right? A comparison.
Comparison. Okay.
All right, a comparison, exactly. So that was the comparison, right, between the group, right, of children of different ages and the way they play the piano, right, and they control those impulses. I don't know if you have any questions related to this or any comments. Because of the time, we're going to be finishing over here, Luciana, but I want to know if you have any questions or comments.
No, teacher, it's okay.
Good. Perfect. Then, Luciana, then work please with the assignments if you didn't finish them yet, and you have the chance of taking the quiz until Thursday. You have a lot of days, and remember that tomorrow we're going to start the last unit. All right. It means it's going to be Wednesday, Friday, and Monday, and that's it. We're going to be taking the final test. All right. So let's be ready for that. Thanks for being in this conversation, Luciana, and have a great night.
Thank you, teacher. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, good evening with me. How are you?
Good evening, teacher. I'm fine, thanks.
That's great. So let's begin the conversation with you, Whitney. I have something different for you. And actually, it's not this one. It's going to be this one over here, related to trees. All right. And it's a question. The question is the following, Whitney. What happens if you cut down all of a city's trees? The first thing we're going to do is watch the introduction of this video to understand what happened with two cities. One of the cities is going to be Uruk, and the other city is going to be Anuradhapura. All right, two different cities who treated trees in a different way. And because of that, the destiny of these cities was different. So to begin with this video, I have a couple of questions for you, Whitney. The first question is, how important do you think that trees are and why?
The trees is very important because when there isn't a lot of trees, there are more pollution.
Okay, good, good. That's a really interesting reason. That's a really interesting also benefit that they can give us, right, to eliminate pollution. Be careful, right? When you say trees, it's going to be plural, so you can say trees are very important, right? And when there aren't, right, a lot of trees. But yes, you're right. Pollution, that's something, right, that trees help us at with. Now, the second question, it's very similar to this one, but it's the question that you have in the title, Whitney. What do you think that could happen if we got to cut all the trees that we have in our cities? What do you think that the consequence can be?
Okay, in this situation, our environment could be poor, and there are more healthy problems in the humans and the animals, and there isn't oxygen, uh,
Oxygen. Mhm.
oxygen in the world.
Okay, okay, that's really interesting. Yes, many health related problems, right? Health
Yeah.
related problems, not only to humans, perhaps also to animals, of course. Yes, you're right. And yes, something that you mentioned, oxygen, right? The oxygen is something that we get purified, right, by trees. So if we don't have trees, perhaps like the thing that we're going to be like breathing, it's going to be polluted, right? Or contaminated. And that's going to be dangerous for our health in general, as you mentioned. So good. Now, with that idea, please, this is going to be a little bit long, Whitney. It's going to be 1 minute and 40 seconds, more or less. Try to pay attention, all right, Whitney, to the differences between these two cities and what was the consequence, all right, of how they treated the trees. So let's pay attention.
This is the tale of two ancient cities and the trees that determined their destinies. In 3000 BC, Uruk was more densely populated than modern-day New York City. This crowded capital had to continually expand their irrigation system to feed its growing population. 2,500 years later, in Sri Lanka, the city of Anuradhapura had a similar problem. They were also growing constantly, and like Uruk, their city relied heavily on an elaborate irrigation system. As Uruk grew, its farmers began chopping down trees to make space for more crops. In Anuradhapura, however, trees were sacred. Their city housed an offshoot of the Bodhi tree, under which Buddha himself was said to have attained enlightenment. Religious reverence slowed farmers' axes and even led the city to plant additional trees in urban parks. Initially, Uruk's expansion worked well, but without trees to filter their water supply, Uruk's irrigation system became contaminated. Evaporating water left mineral deposits, which rendered the soil too salty for agriculture. Conversely, Anuradhapura's irrigation system was designed to work in concert with the surrounding forest. Their city eventually grew to more than twice Uruk's population, and today, Anuradhapura still cares for a tree planted over 2,000 years ago.
Okay, right? I told you it was a little bit long, 1 minute 40 seconds, but that is the introduction, right, of this video, a little bit long. But they are showing that, right, introduction because they want to show us the importance of trees. Let's understand how. So first, please, Whitney, try to tell me everything that you were able to understand, right, in this introduction. And if you can make like a short comparison, right, a short comparison between Uruk and Anuradhapura and what happened to this city.
Okay. The first in both cities, tourists determine the destinations because in both cities, the population is growing. So for the reason, the tourist is a problem because there isn't places to build house or other structures.
But in the second city, religion is important. For the reason they plant more trees, but the contamination is in the water. So for the reason the trees is down.
Okay, but in that part, but so far I think you're doing a good job. So, but what do you think that happened related to pollution or contamination? Do you think that because of the contamination, the trees, all right, went down or were cut down? Or do you think that because of the trees were cut down, something started to get contaminated? What do you think that happened there?
What happened with the contaminate
Yeah,
on the tree on the streets?
yeah, or what do you think that produced that contamination? Because in the way you're telling me, with me, I understand that you're saying that because of the contamination, they cut down the trees. It's like you're saying, first, it happened the contamination, and second, they had to cut down the trees. But was it like that, or was it the opposite? Was it because they cut down the trees that the contamination of something like the water started? What happened first and what happened second there?
The contamination is after,
Okay.
because I remember in the video they don't cut down the trees, but the filters of the waters is contamination because there is a lot of populations in the cities.
All right. But then that contamination is produced by the number of people. Then that is the reason of the contamination, or what do you think is the main cause?
Mm, the main cause in between population or the contamination.
Huh? Yes, the main cause for the contamination. What caused the contamination? What was the origin of that contamination that you're talking about?
Um, the pollution, because they when there is a lot of pollution population, sorry, um, they do more trash, for example, or um, more contamination.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. All right, and let's talk about the other one. We're going to see all those details. In the other one, you mentioned that in Anuradhapura, right? You mentioned religion. Why do you think that religion was important there? What was religion telling to the population so that they started to take care of the trees? What were the trees for that religion?
Okay, the only I heard of the religion is that the trees is so important for these religions. So when the people cut down trees, they plant more trees. I only remember that.
Okay, that's really interesting, and you're right over there. Yes, for that relation that they had, right, in Anuradhapura, trees are very, very important, right? They are sacred. And because they are sacred, people cannot touch those trees. Even, right, not only not touching the trees, but they had to plant more trees, as you were saying. Good. And what do you think then that was, or well, actually, what were you able to understand about the destinies of these cities? What happened with Uruk and what happened with Anuradhapura at the end, Whitney?
Uh, the destination is mentioned in the video, right?
Ah, the destiny, right? Exactly, the destiny of these cities. What happened with these
Uh,
cities at the end?
uh, okay, I didn't hear this part, but I think that is the same, because in the second city, um, um, yes, there is a religion that take care of the trees, but
the city is a problem, so the contamination is continuing in the in the in the city. I don't know that is
Okay,
correct.
we're going to try to understand. Yes, you have a lot of information over there. Most of it is great. It's very good. But we're going to try to organize because at the end, if they are going to say that Uruk, it began very, very well, but at the end, because of what happened with the trees, this city didn't work. All right, they had a lot of problems, so this city like kind of disappeared, or many people like perhaps moved to another place. I don't know what happened, but this city was like a failure. All right, they couldn't do it, but they actually, yes, they did it. It was a success. Why? Because they took care of the trees, and actually pollution, contamination was not a problem for Anuradhapura. Why? Because of the trees. But let's try to understand the details. I'm going to turn on the captions and I'm going to try to say this very briefly so that you can give me a short summary of it. So, yes, the ancient cities, right? Uruk and Anuradhapura, those two cities, and the trees that determined, and this is the word that you need to use, right? The destinies, right? The trees that determined their destinies. So the main problem, yes, both cities had a problem, and it was the population. Both cities were densely populated, right? Both cities, Uruk and Anuradhapura, right? They were very crowded or very populated, and they needed irrigation systems, right? And what is an irrigation system? This is an irrigation system, right? Is the way you distribute water so that people have access to that water, right? And they feed themselves. So Anuradhapura and Uruk needed irrigation systems because they were growing, right? Now, what was the difference? I'm going to mention the difference over here. So far, they are the same. They have a lot of population, they rely on irrigation systems, and they are the same. But here is like the failure of Uruk. Uruk started to chop down the trees, cut down the trees to make more space for crops. What are crops? Crops are like spaces of land, all right, in which you are going to grow your food and you're going to eat that, right? So Uruk started to chop down, to cut down the trees, and that was a big mistake. But Anuradhapura didn't do that. Why? Because the trees were sacred. And even as you mentioned, right? They are going to see that over here. They planted additional trees. So Anuradhapura was doing a great job. Uruk was not. At the beginning, right, Uruk expansion was well, all right, was working very, very well. It worked well, as I said in the video. But because they chopped down the trees, because they cut down the trees, the irrigation system got contaminated. Why? Because trees also help, all right, to eliminate the contamination on the soil, on the water. That's also something that trees do. So the irrigation system became contaminated, the water evaporated, the soil or the land became salty. It means that you cannot grow your food there, you cannot eat. And of course, that was a failure for Uruk. But Anuradhapura, right, was totally the opposite because they took care of the trees. They didn't have contamination. They didn't have pollution. They didn't have anything. And actually, right, the present right moment, they are still taking care of some trees that are over 2,000 years ago. So please, to finish this conversation with me, try to give me a short summary, then one more time, about Uruk and Anuradhapura. Very shortly, what happened with these two cities, please?
Okay, so in both cities, the population expanded, but and they have irrigation systems. But in the first city, people had access of this water. So for the reason there are more contamination in these irrigation systems. And for the reason the trees chopping down, But in Apura,
Anuradhapura?
don't have this contamination because they take care more of these irrigation systems.
Okay, good. Only one little detail. Remember that the contamination actually was not because of the people, because also in Anuradhapura, there were a lot of people, but the water was not contaminated. So it was not because of the people, and it was not because of the contact with the people. It was because they decided to cut down the trees. And when you cut down the trees, the water becomes contaminated. Why? Because the water, or sorry, the trees, besides purifying the oxygen, the trees also help cleaning, all right, contamination from the soil, from the land, and from water. So it was because of the trees and not because of the people. That's the only thing. I don't know if you have any questions or comments to finish today, please, Whitney, let me know.
No, I understand. Yes, the last part I understand well. Thank you.
Good. That's great, Whitney. There's one more part. We're going to watch that in the next conversation. Thanks for being in this one and have a great night, Whitney. See you tomorrow in class.
Thank you, teacher. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You're welcome. Hello, good evening, Melissa. How are you?
Hello, Jose Luis. I'm good.
That's great, Melissa. Sorry for making you wait. I wanted to finish that part. If not, it was going to hard to do it. So let's work with you then. I have an interesting video for you to watch this time. It's related to classical music and some of the benefits that classical music may have for us in general. But first, I want to know what's the general knowledge that you have about that. How good do you think that classical music is? And why is it a good idea to keep listening to this kind of music? What do you think that some benefits are?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Melissa. You can work with the call.
No, it's okay. I will call her later.
Okay.
I think the benefits of the classical music is that it shows the evolution that music itself had. For example, the complexity of the notes or even the length of the songs. It's different. It's not the same classical song from a classical song that lasts, I don't know, 5 to 8 minutes, even 10, to a pop song nowadays that is 3 or 4 minutes long tops. I think that it shows also the depth that the musicians had, because they used to write music in a very complex way and try to evoke really complex feelings without voice. I think that's the most significant difference between classical music or modern music, that almost in the majority of the songs there is no voice in a classical song. So they try to tell us everything, all the feelings and all the feelings that they wanted to share without words. And for that, the music itself had to be complex and had to be, I don't know, tell a story without with a lot of jumps. And I think that's the biggest difference. And that's it. I think that's the biggest difference between classical music.
All right. That was great. That was a really interesting approach. I agree with you. Differences in terms of duration, right? Difference in terms of complexity. That is great. Yes, because some sonatas, for example, or symphonies are going to last 20, 25, or 30 minutes. And of course, there are many movements and they have to make changes. And as you said very well, they try to tell us something, right? They try to communicate something by playing those notes. So, with that information, I think that was really interesting. We're going to take a look at this video, and this guy is going to try to explain what are some benefits, all right, in terms of how classical music can help a human being in certain aspects, all right, of our lives and in certain behaviors that we may have to make them better. So, let's pay attention. The first part is an introduction in which he gives like different examples, but let's try to understand those examples.
Probably a lot of you know the story of the two salesmen who went down to Africa in the 1900s. They were sent down to find if there was any opportunity for selling shoes, and they wrote telegrams back to Manchester. And one of them wrote, "Situation hopeless, stop, they don't wear shoes." And the other one wrote, "Glorious opportunity, they don't have any shoes yet." Now, there's a similar situation in the classical music world, because there are some people who think that classical music is dying. And there are some of us who think you ain't seen nothing yet. And rather than go into statistics and trends and tell you about all the orchestras that are closing and the record companies that are folding, I thought we should do an experiment tonight. An experiment. Actually,
Okay, that is the first part. I want to know what were you able to understand in this first part, Melissa. He's going to get to this experiment that he calls it. Well, actually, he's going to try to show something only to prove what classical music, all right, does for us. But what did you get from this first part?
I get that he was talking about African, like African music, or somewhere in Africa. I don't know, through this study, he wanted to show the power of music in terms of time, and I think also places, because Africa was mentioned.
All right. Yes, actually, yes, he was mentioning something in Africa, but it was because something different, all right? It was because he wanted to work with a metaphor. He said, for example, when some salespeople went to Africa, right, they saw that people there didn't wear shoes, right? And one of the salespersons said, well, that's a problem, right? They don't wear shoes, so we cannot sell them shoes. But the other person said, wow, that's a great opportunity. They don't wear shoes, so we can sell them shoes, right? So then they have shoes. And why he's showing that? Because he wants to show that there are always, sorry, two different perspectives of what's happening, right? And he believes that it's happening the same with classical music. Many people believe that classical music is dying or well, already died, but he believes that it's not the case, that they didn't see anything yet. And he's going to show us, right, why he's saying that by giving us this experiment. All right, so let's try to pay attention to this experiment. Melissa, you're going to tell me what do you think is going to happen to the children that he's going to mention, all right, of different ages, and what is going to be the difference in the way they play? In what way you think that classical music or music in general is helping those children, all right, or the child that he's mentioning in the example? So I'm going to play it.
it's not really an experiment because I know the outcome. But it's like an experiment. Now, before we start, I need to do two things. One is I want to remind you of what a 7-year-old child sounds like when he plays the piano. Maybe you have this child at home. He sounds something like this. I see some of you recognize this child. Now, if he practices for a year and takes lessons, he's now 8 and he sounds like this. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons. Now he's 9. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons. Now he's 10. And at that point, they usually give up. Now, if he'd waited for one more year, you would have heard this. Now, what happened was not maybe what you thought, which was he suddenly became passionate, engaged, involved, got a new teacher, he hit puberty, or whatever it is. What actually happened was the impulses were reduced. You see, the first time he was playing with an impulse on every note. And the second, with an impulse every other note. You can see it by looking at my head. The 9-year-old put an impulse on every 4 notes. And the 10-year-old on every 8 notes. And the 11-year-old 1 impulse on the whole phrase. I don't know how we got into this position.
Okay, so until that part, all right, it seems that he's just playing and playing and trying to show, like, right, that you can improve in music. Of course, that's also the point. But what do you think that he's trying to show? One word here is the word impulse. That's very important. So tell me, Melissa.
I think that he tried to show us the importance of time and also practice, even if he don't say it clearly. I think he shows how the music evolves through time and through practice, and how we can create more complex music that is more complex if we practice more, and if we are, I don't know, more capable, I mean, in terms of physical ability, but I don't know.
All right, yes, it's related to that. And one thing that I want you, well, yes, I want you to tell me here. He mentions the word impulse, and he's saying, right, the 8-year-old is like with impulses in every note. Every note is like very strong. He's 9-year-old, and the impulses are only like once every certain notes. He is like 9 or 10 years old, and the impulse is every 4 notes. And he's 11, and the impulse is only 1 for every phrase. What do you think that he means by that? Why is he talking about? Because with impulse, he's talking about that like strong, right, behavior of playing the note very strongly. That is the impulse. What do you think happens with music then? And what do you think is happening with that child and the impulses being reduced? What do you think it's related then to music and impulses?
I think that it's related because you become more familiar with playing the notes. I think you need more impulse because you tend to forget the notes or what comes next. And also because you, I don't know, you are not familiar with playing for longer periods of time. So I think you need more impulses because you tend to forget the notes, or you get tired easily. I don't know the word, but
Okay. Okay, you can say easier with a certain context and easily also. Both words or right work. It depends on the idea that you want to transmit. But yes, and actually it's also related to how you need to control yourself, right? How you need to control certain impulses. And music actually, and classical music is going to let you know this, all right? I'm just going to play 30 more seconds to see what he's going to say related to that idea. Let's please pay attention to those last 30 seconds.
I didn't say I'm going to move my shoulder over, move my body. No, the music pushed me over, which is why I call it one buttock playing. Can be the other buttock. You know, a gentleman was once watching a presentation I was doing, and I was working with a young pianist. He was the president of a corporation in Ohio. And I was working with this young pianist, and I said, the trouble with you is you're a two-buttock player. You should be a one-buttock player. And I moved his body like that while he was playing. Suddenly the music took off, took flight. There was a gasp in the audience when they heard the difference. And then I got a letter from this gentleman. He said, I was so moved, I went back and I transformed my entire company into
All right. I think he's also mentioning other things, right? Position and so on. I didn't. I wanted to go to the next part, but it seems that it's going to be after this. But in this part, all right, he's also talking about right the way, the position that they have. But I want to get to the important things to finish this conversation, Melissa. He's trying to show this, and we're going to continue watching this in the next conversation. But he's showing this because there are many benefits that we're going to get. First, actually, it's going to be that you control your impulses. Because with classical music, all right, classical music, sorry, different to the music that we have now, the complexity of the notes, all right, needs you to play with control, with patience. You cannot be, all right, impulsive when you play. You need to control your impulses. You need to be organized and so on, all right? But this is the last question to finish today, please, Melissa. Do you think that it happens with other kinds of music? Do you think that that's a benefit that it's only part of classical music, or that it happens with general music? The control of impulses, the patience, the organization, and so on and so forth. What do you think to finish the conversation?
I think the main idea is present in every genre or most of them, but not in the same amount. For example, I personally I don't think that some genres are worst or are bad, but they don't have to me the same type of organization. I don't know, for example, trap. I won't say reggaeton, no, but trap, even some types of some subgenres of hip hop and rap, they seem pretty messy, but I don't know. I think the main idea is present in every genre, but not in the same way as in classical music. For example, the complexity, or how as I was saying, the length or the, I don't know, the structure is not the same.
Good, good. Yes, I agree with you. Perhaps it's going to be present, right, in every genre, in every kind or type of music that there's out there. But yes, the way in which you're going to be working with these characteristics, right, is going to be different. Good. So let's finish here, please, Melissa. We're going to continue watching to show you and to learn some benefits related to classical music. But that's it. Do you have any final questions or comments to finish? Please let me know.
Yes, I I wanted to tell you, I don't know if you already noticed, but um, yesterday was the deadline to the, I think it's the second unit or the third one, I don't remember. And
Mhm.
I did some activities, but not all of them. To be honest, I've been very busy. My mind is all over the place because my father-in-law has COVID, and
Okay.
actually, uh, I will disconnect from this call to get into another Zoom meeting because we will start like, I don't know how to say that in English, but like a rifa, because
Okay.
the cost of the hospital, all the medicines are pretty pretty expensive. So I've been these days kind of busy, and that's why I wasn't in yesterday's class or Friday's class, because I was trying to do that. And I did like two activities out of all, I think there were 31, but that's why I've been kind of late, or I've been not going to the classes. And I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. It's not because I want to, but I really want to help my partner and try to do this. And I will try to be in tomorrow's class. And I will try to not forget the other activities. I don't know if it's correct to ask you if you can give me until midnight from today for unit
Yes.
3. But if it's that possible, I will try to do all of them, because I don't know how this will turn out in the future, because right now he's in, I don't know how to say that in English, but he's in terapia intensiva.
Mhm.
So I don't know what we will do, and I want to help the family, and I've been very busy because of that. And I I didn't want you to think that I'm not involved in the course, or I don't have the compromise or the responsibility to be attending. But that's it.
All right, perfect. No, thank you for letting me know, Melissa. I know that many things can happen, and I always understand that. But yes, actually, first, all right, I changed the date because I realized that some of you were not able to complete that. So actually, yes, you have until today at 11:59 p.m. All right, to complete that. All right, that for one thing. The other one, don't worry. It's just enough to let me know. I know that you are engaged with this. I know, by the way, you participate, the level of English you have. So I know that you are there, all right? So I totally get it. One thing for the words that you were asking, the first one is going to be just like a giveaway, all right? A giveaway. That's a giveaway in which you get some things, right, that you're going to give to people when they buy those little things, right? That's a giveaway. Right, and the other, it's very similar to Spanish. You can say intensive therapy. That's going to be also one thing. And that's it. All right, I get it, Melissa. Don't worry. Then try to work your assignments today. The quiz was already assigned, but you have until Thursday to take the third quiz. All right, so there's plenty of time. That's it then. Don't worry. Try to work with the videos that we have right in the channel. But that's it. I hope everything gets better for you, Melissa. Thanks again for letting me know. And I think that's it. Have a good night and see you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much, Jose Luis. See you tomorrow.